Hey guys, welcome to Commander Insight. I'm going to be doing another deck tech on one of my newer decks from Modern Horizons 2. This is Sythis, Harvest's Hand. It's a Selesnya Enchantress deck, and the whole goal is to basically cast a lot of enchantments, gain life, and draw cards until you get your win con. It's very similar to Suvasa and other Enchantress decks. Uses a lot of the same strategies, except you can focus solely on green-white, so I like it a lot in that regard. I did have a Suvasa deck, but I traded it in. These are just some of the showcase cards that I'm going to be using that came out recently in the newer sets. So I'm going to get right into the deck tech. So she's a Selesnya color, so she's green-white for a 1/2 legendary enchantment creature nymph. So she herself is an enchantment. And whenever you cast an enchantment, you gain a life and draw a card. So it's great because she comes out pretty much turn 2. If you're playing the cards right, she'll be dropping and she'll stay out. So a lot of the other enchantresses, you have to draw on the 99, so it wasn't as consistent. Suvasa only let you draw 1 card per turn, so it wasn't as good. But with this, you can draw multiple, so that's why she's so good. And she's one of my favorite, and I love the Enchantress builds. So let's get right into her. So starting with the lands, I run, I think, 35 lands. And I run a combination of plains and forests. Just kind of, it doesn't really matter, you know, this is a dual color deck, so I think there's like 10 here. And then for another green mana source, I run Tranquil Thicket. And then for the white, very similar, you know, basic plains, a whole bunch of basic plains, and then Secluded Steppe, just to draw. So, you know, you just put any number of combinations of forests and plains, and then for some of the dual lands, dual color lands, I run a Sungrass Prairie, a Fortified Village, Sun Petal Grove, and Command Tower. Pretty standard stuff. I don't even run the Shock Land because you don't really need it with the way that this deck runs and operates. It's not that consistent, or it's consistent enough that you don't need that stuff. But the rest of these lands I'm going to show you, I think, are kind of unique and important. So the first one I'm going to run is a Witch's Clinic. It's kind of a newer card. Adds colorless, but you can pay 2, tap it, and your target commander gains lifelink. So you're going to give your commander lifelink. We do run enough auras that will buff your commander and give her a high power. So it's a great way to gain life when you need it, outside of just casting enchantments. But it actually has come in clutch. Another really clutch card is Reliquary Tower. I love this art here, but basically you don't have a maximum hand size. That's going to become really relevant when, you know, for every enchantment you cast, you're drawing 3 cards or something like that. You're going to have a much larger hand size than 7, and you're going to have to discard down if you don't have an infinite hand size. So we do run a couple search cards to go grab lands, and that's definitely one that you want to grab. And then the last utility land is Hall of Heliod's Generosity. It's a legendary land, adds colorless, but you can also pay 1 and a white and tap it, and put target enchantment card from your graveyard on top of your library. So if something happens to an enchantment, you need to put it back up. It's a great recursion kind of card for enchantments. And then you guys are gonna, you know, make a comment. That's totally fine, but I run 2 fake cards because I'm not paying for them, and that is Gaia's Cradle and Sarah's Sanctum. The deck can run well without them, so you don't need them, but it absolutely, you see a big difference if you do have them in and you end up drawing them. So Gaia's Cradle adds green for every creature you control, and Sarah's Sanctum does the same thing for white, but it's with enchantment. So they're both really awesome cards, super expensive in real life, so don't ever bother, you know, buying them unless you already have one. Artifacts, very simple. I run a Soul Ring, that's it. It's because we run some artifact hate and shutdown, so we really don't want to run that many. But out of the instants and sorceries, we're going to run an Enlightened Tutor to go and search for pretty much whatever enchantment we need. Same with Idyllic Tutor, so it's another enchantment search. We're going to run a Crop Rotation for the lands, sacrifice a land, go grab a land. That's where you can get your Reliquary Tower, Gaia's Cradle, Sarah's Sanctum. Sylvan Scrying, another add to your hand, go get a land. Resurgent Belief, this is kind of like the poor man's Replenish, we can say. It's got Suspend, but basically it puts all enchantment cards from your graveyard onto the battlefield, auras included. So it's a really good card. It's a little telegraphed because people can see it coming because it's got the Suspend, but it's only 2 mana, and, you know, later in the game it's really great to just bring them all back. New card that just came out in the Innistrad set, Rites of Harmony. This card is really good. This card is so good I accidentally decked myself in 1 turn with this. But whenever a creature or an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So it basically can help double up on your draws. And then it's got flashbacks. You can actually cast it twice. The fact that it's instant makes this a really good card. And then into some targeted removal, we have a Nature's Claim, Swords to Plowshares, pretty standard, and then Oblation. I really like Oblation as well. It's kind of an overlooked card nowadays. And then kind of onto some of the win cons. Well, the one we run is Approach of the Second Sun. This kind of goes into any white deck that really doesn't have a instant win. This card can instant win, but it's really more about holding out and kind of pillow forting and just kind of like surviving, and then kind of, you know, getting off an Approach of the Second Sun. If you cast it twice, you win the game on the spot. We also run a Storm Herd. Basically, you put X white Pegasuses on the field based on your life total. So, you know, you gain life by casting enchantments. You have a little bit of a life gain package. Even if this is at like 20, you know, when you cast it, you're getting 21 ones. We run other things that buff creatures, and you can swing out, so you kind of overwhelm your opponent with tokens. And then this is kind of a win con. Usually if you cast it, you're winning the game, but it's not a win con on its own, but Genesis Wave. So one thing this deck can do really well is basically produce a lot of mana. So you're going to dump it into Genesis Wave. You know, if you cast a Genesis Wave for 30, you know, you're basically revealing the top 30 cards of your deck, and you're basically getting every permanent, except basically non-permanents would be the only thing you wouldn't get, but you're going to get lands, enchantments, creatures, everything, and that's going to trigger more draw. So that's kind of going to let you get your board state out and running right away. So on to some of the creatures. I guess this is technically an artifact, but it does not get hindered by our artifact hate, but that is Esper Sentinel. So whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell this turn, they draw a card where X is Esper Sentinel's power. Herald of the Pantheon. This card is actually come in handy more often than not. So the fact that it lets your enchantments cost 1 less actually has been very helpful, especially if you're casting multiple enchantments in a turn. It actually saves you mana, you know, more than just the 1 mana. It's a little better than ramp even, because if you're casting 3 enchantments, you've saved 3 mana. If you cast 4 enchantments, you've saved at least 4 mana. So it definitely has come in clutch. And then you gain life as well for casting enchantment. It's kind of like what your commander does. Faith Healer. This is a cool card that I haven't seen too many people run, but you sacrifice an enchantment and you gain life equal to the enchantment's total casting cost, or, you know, converted mana cost. So that's really good in a pinch if you need to gain life. If you have a Resurgent Belief, the Replenish card, you know, to bring back everything from the graveyard, if you have that, if you just need some extra life. Sometimes you have enchantments that you don't want on the field that you can basically sack at any point. So it's good because it allows you to get rid of your enchantments when you need them and when you want them to. Here's some artifact hate. We run a Collector Oof. Basically activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. So triggered abilities still work, unfortunately, like Panharmonicon stuff and whatnot, but you know, no mana rocks. It shuts down all mana rocks. Anything that, you know, requires you to basically activate. So Ashnod's Altar, the altars get shut down. Really, really good card. Siona, Captain of the Pyleus, I think that's how you say it. She's kind of an aura card. So when she enters the battlefield, look at the top 7 of your library. You can reveal an aura and put it in your hand. And then whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a creature you control, you create a 1/1 human white soldier. So there is a draw engine with Sythis where she's equipping and unequipping auras. So you can basically create some tokens that way. So she's pretty good. And then Heliod's Pilgrim to search out the aura you need. We do run enough hate-bearing auras that you would equip to your opponent's stuff to shut them down, as well as some beneficial ones for your own that this card does end up being worth it. Kind of a redundant effect here with Satyr Enchanter. So this is the Enchantress builds where, you know, cast an enchantment, draw a card. We don't run all of them because you really don't need to. You know, you're going to have your commander out most of the time, so you're always going to have an engine. So you don't really need that many. I think we only run 3 or 4. 2 of them are creatures, so the other one is Citizen Champion. This actually is really cool because it can get big too. So whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield, which is different than casting, so if you bring it out for enters the battlefield for any reason, so Genesis Wave, or if you're reviving them all, you get to draw a card and put a +1/+1 on it. So this thing can become a 10/10 or a 10/13 very easily. It can go even higher. And you know, if you're giving stuff the lifelink, or if you're giving stuff trample, I mean, this can be a big beater very quickly. Then we run an Archon of Sun's Grace, another similar kind of effect, but whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, so again, it doesn't have to be cast, you create a 2/2 Pegasus, and then it itself has flying and lifelink, but other Pegasus you control have lifelink. So it goes really well with that other 10 mana spell, sorcery, that we talked about earlier, Storm Herd, because it'll give all of these basically lifelink as well. So it definitely can help ramp. And then lastly, we run a Seaborn Muse because we do have a lot of mana and some mana dumps, so it's nice to be able to untap during your opponent's turn and save up your mana for your instants and your mana dumps. So that's it for just the creatures. To kind of transition now into the enchantments, we're going to go with the enchantment creatures. So I run a little bit of an enchantment creature package as well, where they count as enchantments, but they also count as creatures. So you get kind of the benefit of both, but also the downside of both, which is the removal. There's a lot of removal for creatures, but Elsiad of Life's Bounty, it's great. It's got lifelink, but you can sacrifice it, and target creature or enchantment gains protection of the color of your choice. So that's really good to protect your commander or just anything that you might need. Destiny Spinner, this card is awesome. It's creatures and enchantments you control can't be countered, so that right there is awesome, especially if you're playing blue decks. But you can also pay 3 and a green, and a target land you control becomes an XX elemental with trample and haste, where X is the number of enchantments you control. And there's times when we easily have 10 plus enchantments, so you can basically make a land that's 10/10 and has trample. And you can keep doing that. You can make all your lands that if you want, if you have enough mana. So like I said, this deck generates a lot of mana. Another new awesome card, Sanctum Weaver. You tap it and you add X of any one color, so it's only one color, so just remember that. But where X is the number of enchantments you control. Again, this thing can tap for 10 green, 10 white, 12. It gets really out of hand fast, so it's really great for ramping. It's kind of like Selvala, but for enchantments. So really, really good card. Dryad of the Elysian Grove. I love this card. This is like the replacement to Chromatic Lantern in my mind, but it also lets you basically play 2 lands a turn. So it's a 2/4, so that's good blocker, but you can play 2 lands and then it basically fixes your colors. Not as relevant in a 2-color deck, but still helpful. And then probably the best Enchantress, Eidolon of Blossoms. You don't need to cast it. Basically, just whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield, you get to draw. So this card, this is actually part of the reason why I decked out, because you have to do the drawing. So just be careful sometimes, because if you cast a Genesis Wave for 30, and you only got 30 cards in your deck after that, and you bring out a ton, you might actually end up drawing way too many cards. But it definitely helps accelerate your engine a lot. And then lastly is Nyxbloom Ancient. Like I said, this deck just generates a ton of mana really fast. Having this out, each land taps for 3 mana, Soul Ring taps for 6. This card taps, this card could tap for 30 mana. If you have 10 enchantments out with this out, it'll just ramp up crazy. And then we do have a win con that actually dumps mana into it to win, so I'll get to that right now. So onto the enchantments, the bulk of the deck. We're playing Exploration. I love this art, awesome art, but basically you can play an additional land each turn. Same with Burgeoning, great card to help ramp, basically play lands when your opponents do. We run a Miri's Guile. It's kind of like a little mini Sylvan library where you can basically rearrange the top 3 cards of your library every turn. Authority of the Councils, because I want to stop those aggro decks, but also kind of want a life gain, so that's great for 1 mana. So here's one of the draw engines. This is Whip Silk, and basically you equip it to your commander. You don't have to equip it to the commander, but it usually works best to do it. So when you cast it, you draw a card, and then you pay a green to return it to your hand, and then you can just pay a green again. So if you make a ton of mana, you can basically just keep equipping and unequipping to this card, to Sythis or whatever creature. So it just kind of helps you draw through your deck. So awesome card, and it's only 1 mana. Ethereal Armor. This is really awesome for basically swinging in with your commander. The enchanted creature gets +1 for each enchantment you control, and it gains first strike. So you're already going to be at, you got to be thinking 5, 6, 7, 10. Just on its own, you got first strike. So here's a win con we run, Helix Pinnacle. So we make a ton of mana, and you basically can dump that mana into this. So you put X tower counters on it, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 100 or more tower counters, you win the game. So we don't have anything that makes infinite mana, no infinite combos or anything like that. I just think sometimes they're cheesy, and this deck isn't supposed to be, this isn't competitive, so I'm not running the Heliod and Walking Ballista and all those other things. I wanted to find win cons that were cool, that I never used before, that really are unique and you don't really see in too many other decks. So I wanted to try and run that in this. Helix Pinnacle is a great card. It's got Shroud, so no one's going to target removal. They really have to, bounce it with a Cyclonic Rift or exile it, mass exile, mass destruction, which there aren't a ton of those cards. So it's probably staying on the field most of the time. And, you know, with that triple mana out, the next Bloom Ancient, you can basically make, you know, a ton of mana and just dump it in, you know, especially if you got a Seedborn Muse and you're untapping every turn. This can get to 100 pretty quickly if left alone. So it's another alternative win. It's not the only way to win, but it's, you know, 1 mana, so you're drawing a card off of 1 mana. So it's been good. Sterling Grove, great card. Other enchantments you control have Shroud. That can be a problem for you with auras because your commander is an enchantment. So if you know you have these two out, you can't equip any auras to your commander because it has Shroud. But what's nice about Sterling Grove is you can actually sacrifice it to basically search for an enchantment and put it on top. So you can get rid of it when you need to. But usually it comes in handy until you need to get rid of it. So that's usually what I use it for. We run a Sylvan Library for draw. We run a Stony Silence, which is another copy of the Collector Oof, but in white, and it's an enchantment, so it's a little better. We run a Righteous Aura, helps with damage, you know, helps us basically survive, pay a white and 2 life. The next time a source of damage of your choice, you prevent that damage. So this doesn't target. Basically, this can be, you know, if opponent's commander's coming in to smack you for 21 and you can prevent it, or infect or whatever. It can be pretty much anything that would cause you damage, you can just prevent by paying white and 2 life. So very worth it. Evolutionary Leap, because we don't run that many creatures and we can easily sacrifice tokens to go get those creatures. Luminarch Ascension, another token generator, and it's a mana dump. So with a lot of mana that we make, we can basically dump it in to make 4/4 white angels. It's technically another win con. If you have 10 4/4 white angels, that's 40 damage on the field right there. It can be done at instant speed, which is great. And then with the amount of pillow forting you're doing, they're probably not swinging in at you, so you actually can get the counters on this pretty easily. Some targeted removal enchantments. We got Seal of Primordium and Seal of Cleansing. They do the same thing. They basically, you sacrifice it to destroy target artifact or enchantment. That's what white and green like to do. Then we got Lignify, enchant a creature, turns it into a 0/4 tree folk with no abilities, so you can throw it on an opponent's commander. Darksteel Mutation, another really good card to basically shut down someone's commander because it makes them a 0/1 indestructible insect and they lose all abilities. So they can't just swing in and have someone, you know, kill the commander or destroy the commander. They have to find a way to either sack it, return it to the hand, or get rid of this somehow. Another aura for your opponent, Kenrith's Transformation. Throw it on a creature, they lose all abilities, and they get a 3/3 green elk. And what's cool is you also draw a card. So this actually, you draw 2 cards if your commander's out. Another aura for you, All That Glitters. Throw it on your commander. It gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. So we only run the 1 Soul Ring, but we do run a card that generates treasures, so that counts for those as well. Wolf Willow Haven, enchant land, and it taps for an extra green. Enchantress's Presence, it's another enchantment card. Cast an enchantment, draw a card. The fact that it itself is an enchantment is a little better. Overgrowth, put it on a land. When you tap the land, you get 2 extra green. Ancestral Mask, awesome card here. It gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment on the battlefield, so not just your own. So this thing makes your commander well over 20/20. So when you swing in, you're going to basically win as long as you connect. So that's an awesome card. Another really fun card I like here is Shield of the Oversoul. It's an aura, and basically you equip it to your commander, and as long as your commander is green, which it always will be, it gains +1/+1 and is indestructible, which is awesome. Having an indestructible commander that's really beefy, just, you know, it's a little bit of a Voltron. And then if the enchanted creature is white, which it is, it gets +1/+1, it has flying. So now you have a flying, indestructible 21/21 commander that you can just swing at whoever you need to and connect. Then we run Song of the Dryads, make a permanent a forest, so that's always going to come in handy. Grasp of Fate. This is the best one of the kind, where basically it comes out and you exile 1 permanent from each opponent until Grasp of Fate leaves the battlefield. So it basically can be a 3-for-1. Aura of Silence. It's kind of like a Staxy, makes your opponent's artifacts and enchantments cost 2 more to cast, so it kind of shuts down them. And then also you can sack it to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Ghostly Prison for pillow forting. Just to note that it doesn't stop your planeswalkers from getting hit, but we don't run any right now, so it doesn't really matter. But just, you know, the extra 2 damage will sway people from not attacking you. Solitary Confinement. This is a great card if you can get it off, or it's very useless if you can't. And what I mean by that is you need to have a lot of cards in hand, or you need to have a good enough draw engine on the field where you're casting enchantments and drawing into enchantments where you can actually not have to worry about your draw step. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you have to sacrifice this unless you discard a card, and then you skip your draw step. You personally have Shroud, so you the player have Shroud, and it prevents all damage that would be dealt to you. So really the only way that you can lose is by life loss. So that does not technically damage. So black effects that drain life can still affect you, but anyone swings in at you, nothing can happen. No red can target you with damage because you have Shroud. So great card. Another life gain card here, Words of Worship. So you pay 1, and then the next time you would draw, you gain 5 life instead. So there are times later in the game when you don't need to draw. You cast an enchantment and you're drawing 3 cards off of it. You can basically pay a mana, draw 2 cards, and gain 5 life, or pay it twice and gain 10 life. So it's really cool for life gain and kind of surviving longer. We run a Smothering Tithe because it's an enchantment deck, and this is just an amazing enchantment. Gives you artifact treasures that you can sack, but it's also really good for just going around the board and gaining more mana. Mirari's Wake to double your mana, another great way to ramp up. Sigil of the Empty Throne, great card for when you're casting enchantments, and then you get 4/4 angels. So we're making tokens for doing what we already want to do. Cathar's Crusade, awesome card here, especially when you can get a lot of creatures out at once. But it's a great way to pump up pretty much all your creatures, but especially your commander, because it'll most likely be out the whole game. When a creature enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 on each creature you control. So imagine that with the Stormherd. So let's just say your life is 20. They're all going to be like 21/21 creatures right off the bat. So that combo is a really good win con. And then last card is going to be Sphere of Safety, where basically creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless they pay X, where X is the amount of enchantments you control. So that's pretty much the deck. I've went with a token build and kind of changed it around a little bit, more of an aura build. So right now, if you have any suggestions, I'm definitely open to them. I didn't want to go with the typical win cons. I know this is actually a very competitive commander, Sythis is. It can be really, really good, and I like it, but it's just a different play style. I love enchantments, probably my second favorite after creatures. So just being able to just cast enchantments, they're going to remain on the field. You're going to have a huge board state, and people are just going to either come after you because they think they're threatened by the amount of stuff you have out, or they're not going to be able to because you pillow for it, and they just can't stop you. So let me know what you guys think.